Hey guys, I'm WildfireAJS, and I'm doing a tutorial. It's not going to be a quick tutorial necessarily, because I'm going to do a lot of explaining on Kerbal Space Program Demo. I had a buddy who said he could barely get the thing into orbit. He couldn't even get it into space, really, and he didn't know what was going on or how things worked or what to push or what to do. I remember when I first loaded the demo up, I couldn't even figure out how to get the thing off the launch pad. And so I'm going to kind of show you a general idea of what I've learned so far and how to get your first rocket into orbit. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start game. And we're going to start a new game. And for the demo, you can't change the player name. And so we're just going to go and start. And I own the full version, so I'm not worried about overriding the demo game. Alright, so this is our space station field. We have a spaceplane hangar over here. It's locked out in the demo. You can build planes and stuff in the full version. Like plane shuttles or just planes that fly inside the atmosphere. You can do other stuff like that. We have our tracking station, our launch pad, and our vehicle assembly building. For right now, we're just going to go straight to the vehicle assembly building, and I'll explain the other stuff later. So we're going to go to the vehicle assembly building, and the demo is drastically limited on parts. In the full version, you have many different types of command pods and modules and, solar panels and all sorts of stuff that you can do to build space stations and voyage way out past into another galaxy, all sorts of stuff. And so I'm going to go up here and name this craft, because you can build your own custom crafts and save them and load the models later other times. I'm just going to name this demo rocket. And since we only have one command pod in the demo version, we'll go ahead and click on it, and we'll get our stage set here with our command pod. Now, here's the way the controls work. Holding the right mouse button allows you to rotate the camera. Left-clicking once on the command pod or any depart lets you drag it around. If you click on it and use the scroll wheel, you can move up and down. Scroll wheel moves the camera up and down anyway. And so that's the command pod. That's where it holds one single astronaut. We have other command pods in the full version that'll hold multiple astronauts. You have probes and all sorts of stuff that you can build. But this is what we have right now, so we'll get started with that. So we have that there. First things first, we need to go to the utility tab, and if we plan on returning back to the planet, since we don't want to just get into orbit, we also want to be able to come back down without blowing to pieces, we need to add a parachute. So we're going to drag that, add that to the tip of the pod, and there we have the parachute. So we're going to build this from the top down. We have parachute pod, and now what I need to do, or what I prefer to do next, is I go to control, and there's a couple things to know here real quick. You have SAS module and advanced SAS module. They all have money, so during the campaign I'm sure you can't just click whatever you want, but the demo and the beta right now are just sandbox mode, so we can use any parts we want without any kind of limitation of cache. So I always grab the advanced SAS module. It stands for Stability Augmentation System. It is basically a computerized system that will automatically use your thrusters and your fins or whatever you have on your ship to automatically try to keep the nose pointed where you want it pointed. So once you set it, and you turn on the SAS system, it will automatically make tweaks and adjustments to your control systems to try to keep you stable where you want it to go. I highly recommend it. You can do it without it. It's just frustrating and annoying, especially when you're trying to do farther out launches to other planets. And so I would recommend using the SAS module. If you get more hardcore later, feel free to leave it off and just try to manually control everything. So what we're going to need now is these RCS thrusters. They burn on a type of fuel called monopropellant. Basically, once we get into the upper ionosphere and out into space, obviously there's no wind, so your fins are kind of useless. And so we need thrusters to help us be more agile and maneuver the ship where we want it to go. So we're going to add these RCS thrusters to the tip of the pod here. Now, we're going to go down here in the bottom left, and you have symmetry mode and you have angle snap. What symmetry mode allows you to do is to add multiple parts in direct symmetry of each other. It's really nice. I want to add 4 RCS thrusters. So we're going to click this until we get 4. We'll click on RCS thrusters, and I'm going to drag it about right there. Boom. Now you'll see I added 4 thrusters in perfect symmetry around the pod. Super nice. Okay, So now we have our pod, our parachute, our SAS system, and RCS thrusters. Now the problem is the RCS thrusters don't use your standard rocket fuel, they use monopropellant. So we need to add fuel for those. We're going to grab this FLR25 RCS fuel tank. We're going to pop that on there. And now that's going to fuel our RCS thrusters. So now we need to add some fuel for the main body for once we get into space, and we're going to start doing hard burns and whatnot to adjust our orbit. But one thing I did forget here is we're going to click this and move this off to the side. We need to add a decoupler, which is under structural. Decouplers allow us to jettison parts of the body. And now when we're going to re-enter the atmosphere and land, we don't need all this stuff weighing us down for the parachute. So we want just this pod. So I'm going to add a decoupler here, and then add this. So this will allow me on re-entry to jettison these units and have only my pod remaining while I'm descending. Alright, so we're going to go back to Propulsion tab and use the FLT400. Actually, you know what? For the sakes of this demo, or the tutorial, for newer people who might run out of fuel because they overshoot their trajectory or they don't burn fast enough or long enough, we're going to make sure we give you some more fuel. So we're going to use FLT800 for the main body, like so. We'll scroll this up so we have more room down here. And we're going to add the LVT45 liquid fuel engine. It has thrust vectoring, which basically allows you to have more control while you're turning. It has slightly less thrust than the main engine, this bigger engine, the T30. The T30 only has 15 more pounds per square inch, but has a tendency to overheat and doesn't have thrust vectoring. So I say we just stick with the LVT45. And we'll put that there. Now this is going to be our main body once we're in space. This is our fuel canister powering this engine. And once we're in space, the only thing we're going to need these thrusters for and this fuel for is for making adjustments to our orbit and for returning to the planet's returning entry. And we'll end up jettisoning it later on anyhow. So, okay, now we have that. So we're going to add another decoupler to the bottom of this. And now this will allow us to multi-stage out for simply just launch. So everything right here is what we're going to be using once we get into orbit. Now we need to add stuff onto the rest of the body that'll give us enough thrust and enough fuel to reach orbit in the first place. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another T800, and we're actually going to add two T800s. Now this rocket I'm building it's actually a lot more fuel and thrust than you're going to need just to reach orbit, but this is the one that I've been building that allows me to reach other planets. And so I know that you'll have way more fuel and thrust than you're going to need, and you should be ultra safe. And so we have one main body here, two T800s, that gives us 360 gallons of liquid fuel per tank. And then we're going to go ahead and add another LVT45 right here to the bottom. Now we got a really tall rocket, lots of fuel at the moment, but we're not quite done yet. Now, in the full version, you have all sorts of different types of decouplers. Right now in the demo you only have one radial decoupler. In the full version, I have brackets that go out and hold the tanks out farther from the rest of them. And so I'm not positive how well this is going to work with just the radial decoupler, but we're going to give it a try. Just go down here to symmetry mode and change it to 2. And we're going to put the decoupler about right here. We got an equal one on the other side, because we're going to add 2 more tanks. Now this can get a little bit tricky. That's one annoying thing about the beta so far, is when you're trying to add tanks onto decouplers, it doesn't always want to pop on the right away. It's probably the most frustrating thing about the game so far, at least that I've experienced. Sometimes they pop right on there immediately, other times they don't, and it's just overall, there we go. It's like it doesn't always notice the decoupler is there. Now I'm hoping that these radial decouplers are going to give us a clean jettison. When we drop these extra thrusters and tanks on the side, they can hit other parts of your ship. Sorry about that. My headset died. I had to plug it in real quick. What was I saying? Right. What I was talking about is these radial decouplers on the side. They hold these tanks really close. And so what I'm worried about is that when we jettison these tanks, if you're currently rotating your ship or if there's too much wind, these tanks can hit your ship and actually damage your engines and cause problems during launch. So I'm hoping that this will work out okay. But we're going to go ahead and add on 2 more tanks, like so. And we're going to add the bigger engines to the side, the T-30s, just because we want them to burn fast and hard, and we're going to be jettisoning them anyway, so we're not worried about vectoring like we are in the main central body here. Now, this isn't the most aerodynamic, but we have way more fuel than we need and plenty of thrust, and so the aerodynamics aren't going to matter that much. If we wanted to add more aerodynamics, we could, but the demo doesn't really give us very many caps to put on the top of these like the full version does. The full version would allow me to add caps to the top of these and they'd be cone shaped for more aerodynamics. But what we are going to do is that since this game relies heavily on real physics, we need to stabilize this. Otherwise, the thrust from these might slam this top part into this, causing damage. And we definitely don't want that. So we're going to go to structural, and we're going to use these strut connectors. Going to rotate the camera around here. We're going to put it right here on the top. And we're going to stabilize it. That's a little bit higher than I wanted. Let's do this again. You know what? Let's go ahead and do that. We'll go over here because I don't want to put it to the engine casing. There we go. So we're going to stabilize it like that, but additionally we're going to add on the sides here. There we go. There we go. So this should stabilize these extra tanks and stop them from slamming into stuff or breaking off from the force. Now we're almost done. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to aerodynamics and we're going to add some winglets. These are motorized winglets. They actually pivot and move to allow you to adjust what's going on. We're going to change the symmetry to 4 again. There we go. And it keeps dropping down to 2 for some reason. There we go. See if we can get this added on here. Not perfect. I don't really call what I wanted. There we go. There, what I did is I changed the angle snap to square, and that allowed me to line it better up inside those whites. So now we have them even on all sides, not interfering with the other tanks. So when these break away, they shouldn't hit any of these fins. Now that'll give us more control while we're entering the atmosphere. And I think we're just about ready. One thing we do want to look is down here on the right, we have our launch sequence, our stages. And right now we only have when we first launch, we only have the 2 side engines burning. We want to take the main engine up here that's on 4 and drag it down so that all 3 engines fire right off the bat. Now one other thing I'm going to add for the launch is launch stability enhancers. I'm going to put them right here. This will hold our rocket in place so that before we launch we're not sitting directly on the engine caps. Now I believe we're ready. Let's go ahead and get launched and I'll explain that part. Alright, so now we're on the launch pad. There's our rocket. It's not the best or coolest looking rocket in the world, but it should do what we need it to do. Okay, now up here at the top we have our altimeter that shows how far above sea level we are. So right now we're 89 meters above sea level. We have our atmosphere gauge that shows inner atmosphere, stratosphere, ionosphere, and then space. You need to know that so we know how much wind resistance we're getting as far as aerodynamics go and how much thrust we need to apply. We have our altimeter gauge, shows how fast we're increasing or decreasing our altitude. These are toggles for lights and gears and brakes if you have those kind of things installed. We don't have any of them installed, so we're not going to worry about it. And over here on the left, one thing I didn't notice is our launch braces are not going to break off right away, so our engines would start first. We need to drag that down. There we go. So now on the first stage, these braces are going to break away and all 3 engines are going to fire. Now in the bottom left hand here, you'll see our roll, our yaw, and our pitch. A and D control your yaw. W and S control your pitch. And Q and E control your roll. Those are good things to know, but with our SAS advanced module, a lot of it's going to be automated from the computer. Now we have to turn that module on. Over here on the right hand side, you'll see SAS, that's our status light. When it's on, the computer is going to try to keep everything stable. When it's off, it's complete manual control. And then on the left here, we have RCS. That's these thrusters we installed at the top to help control the nose tip. If they're on, the SAS module will use them whenever possible to stabilize the ship. But we only have a limited amount of monopropellant, so we'll have to monitor that so we don't have the computer burn out all our fuel that we'll need once we're up in orbit. So for now, we're going to leave it off. We're going to go ahead and turn on our SAS so that this helps us keep a steady state launch. The computer will assist us. And then additionally, down here in the bottom left, you have throttle. Left shift increases throttle. Control decreases throttle. Left control. On the right, we have G-force. That's kind of self-explanatory. You should know what G-force is. It's the amount of force being applied to the rockets and to the astronaut. We got Jebediah Kerbal joining us over here. And in the middle, we have our nav ball. It's in the shape of a circle. And basically, the very center of the blue top means that we're pointing directly away from the center of the planet. But the inverse would be brown, and it would be the middle dot, which means we were pointing directly towards the center of the planet. And then you have the degrees off to the sides of how far of a degrees you're leaning to that side of the planet and whatnot. This top bar shows meters per second. This is how fast we're accelerating away from the surface. If we left click it, it'll give us how fast our orbit is. Right now we're at 174.6 meters per second. That's because the planet itself is rotating in space. And so we'll go back to surface. And that's about all we need to know for the launch. I'll explain the rest on the way. And so let's go ahead and get this started. We want to hold left shift, get our throttle all the way up to max so we're burning at full throttle from the start. And we're going to push space to activate the first stage, which is going to ignite our engines and drop these stabilizers. So here we go. Now you'll notice in the bottom left here next to the engines, it shows how much fuel each of those engines have. You know what? I did forget something. We're going to do an emergency abort. Like so. I forgot to do one really important, crucial thing. So let me go ahead and show you that real quick. One thing we're going to do to make sure we maintain the proper amount of fuel we need, it shouldn't be this important since we're not going to another planet, but I want to show it to you anyway. Up here we have FTX2 external fuel ducts, and we're going to add symmetry, and we're going to put them right in here. Rotate the camera and connect it like so. Now what that's going to do is just going to feed fuel from these external tanks to the main tank. So what that means is that this center engine is going to use fuel from the side tanks instead of its own main tank. So what that means is that all 3 engines are going to be using fuel from the side tanks. The right one here will use fuel from its tanks, the left one will use fuel from its tanks, and the middle one will use fuel from both outside tanks in equal proportion. What that means is that when we jettison both of these side tanks, our middle tank will still be completely full, and that's important. I don't know if it's important for getting us into orbit, but I know in the regular model to get us to other planets, it's absolutely crucial. So that's all we needed to add. So now we're going to go ahead and go back to launch, clear the launch pad, and proceed. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and throttle up the number or letter T to enable our SAS, toggle it. We'll go and launch. Well, that was a load of fail. I know why. I forgot to modify our disengage thing there. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't feel like making this whole video over again, so just bear with me for one quick second. Okay, remember before when I mentioned that the launch stabilizers were in the wrong stage? they were again. So now it's all set proper. We're good to go. So we're going to throttle all the way up. Enable our SAS module. Now we're off. Alright, now on the bottom left hand here, you can see how much fuel we have per engine. Now, looking at the nav ball, it's kind of wavering a little bit more than I'd like, but we're staying in the middle, so I'm happy for now. If it starts maneuvering more than I'd like, I'll enable our RCS thrusters to help the computer keep it more stable. As you can look down here, the pitch and the yaw are being constantly adjusted by the computer. Now we're going to keep full throttle straight up until we get about 10,000 meters above sea level, and then we're going to change our trajectory about 45 degrees to the right. We could go to the left if we wanted to orbit the planet that way, but I always just go to the right for some reason. Alright, you can hear the wind change, so we got a little bit higher up in the atmosphere. We're still in the inner atmosphere at the moment. Okay, now I'm going to enable our RCS thrusters by hitting R. I'm going to hold F to temporarily disable the computer, and I'm going to hit D to change our trajectory to about 45 degrees. Now we're out of fuel in the side tanks, so I'm going to push spacebar to jettison them. Now we're using the fuel from the main center tank. If you right-click it, you can see how much fuel we have. Right now it's using the top tank up here, like so. Up in the top right, you can see our total fuel. Okay, now we're going to push M to go to space mode, world map, and we're going to go down here to bring up our nav ball. Now right here, this shows our orbit. The A-opsis is the highest point in an orbit. When we want this to get to 100,000 before we stop accelerating. But we're going to go down here again, and we're going to hold F to kill the computer control. We're going to manually adjust our angle to about 25. Let go of F, it'll re-enable the computer control. Now you'll notice up here in the top right, we're burning through our monopropellant much faster than I'd like. But we're only doing a short flight, we're not going to another planet. We are just going to hit orbit and then return. So I'm not too concerned about it, but I'm going to go and disable it for now because we're not trying to be agile. So I push the letter R, it disables the RCS. And now we're relying simply on weight balances and our fins. If we push M again, we'll go back to rocket mode. The air is really thin, but we still have some air. And so these fins are still doing some. Down the bottom right, you see our astronaut is scared to death at the moment. Now, without the RCS, you'll notice the nav ball, we drift a little bit higher, so we're going to hold and readjust it some more. Now, the higher we get up, the lighter the atmosphere gets, the less resistance we have, the faster we gain speed. I'm going to make our trajectory a little more shallow here. I'm going to go down to about 1520. Now we're going to watch this A-opsis until we get to 100,000 meters above sea level. We're almost out of fuel on the secondary tanks. There they go. We're going to jettison that and enable our other engine going on here. Now you notice we're going about 2,000 meters per second now because we're in the upper atmosphere, ionosphere here. And so we're gaining much quicker speed. So once we hit 100,000 meters, we're going to push the letter X to kill all of our engines. Alright, there. Alright, so now our engines are dead. We're in the upper ionosphere. We're not quite into a complete outer space yet. We're still within the atmosphere of Earth. Over there you can see that is the rocket debris. That's my engines I dropped, my side ones. And they're falling back to the planet. We are in an orbit, but we're not in a stable orbit at the moment. You can see we're still gaining altitude. We are now just reaching the outside of the ionosphere. We're still gaining altitude, but we're decreasing speed due to gravitational pull. Now, if you look at this blue circle, this shows our orbit. The aopsis of an orbit is the highest point in an orbit. The epopsis or epilopsis or whatever it's pronounced is the lowest point in an orbit. So if you look at the orbit right now, this is us, and we're traveling along this way, and in an unstable orbit, which means that when we hit the lower side of the orbit, we're going to be crashing back into the planet. So we need to correct this. If you hover over the blue line, the orbit, right about here. Now the aopsis, it says T minus 4 minutes, 17 seconds. This means in 4 minutes and 17 seconds, we're going to reach the highest point in our orbit. And so we're going to click, see the circle on the line? We're going to click, left click, add maneuver, and we're going to make some adjustments. We're going to plan some adjustments, rather. Now, I'll explain what the rest of these do shortly, but suffice it to say that right now, the yellow is to adjust your orbit. If you do the yellow with a circle, you're going to increase the orbit, and if you use the yellow with the X in it, you're going to decrease orbit. It's called ingrade and degrade. It's basically burning out or burning in. And then you have the blue, which is your height. It's going to control the height of your orbit and whatnot. And then the purple is the angle of your orbit. So like if we wanted to increase our angle like that, which I don't really want to, so I'm going to go ahead and put that back to about right there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to drag out this yellow marker. You can see the orange line shows what our new orbit will be after we make the adjustment. So we're going to go out to like here. Now we're going completely around the planet. The aopsis is going to be 167,000 meters, and it's new once we make the adjustment. And the peropsis, not epopsis, sorry, will be 102,000. So it won't be a perfectly elliptical orbit, but it will be a stable orbit, meaning we're not going to crash into the planet. We'll keep orbiting around and around. So now if you look down here in the bottom right, you see this green bar showed up, and it says estimated burn 7 seconds, node in T minus 2 seconds, or 2 minutes 34 seconds. This means in 2 minutes and 34 seconds, we're going to reach this maneuver we set up, and we're going to have to rotate and do a full burn for 7 seconds to adjust our orbit. Now, if you look down here on your nav ball, there's over here in the corner here, you can see the blue. The blue is the marker for our maneuver we just programmed. So we need to point our tip towards that blue marker before we do our burn. So we have to make sure we rotate here before the 2 minutes is up. So we're going to hold F to disable the computer. We're going to hit R to enable our RCS thrusters for more agility. We're going to go ahead and rotate our tip here. Now remember, you're in space, and so you're going to keep moving, so you don't need to put too much, just enough to get you spinning as long as you can make it before you reach it. Now let go of F. There you go. Enable the computer. The computer is going to keep us where we need to be right now. Now, I don't really want to wait 1 minute and 33 seconds before we do this, so we're going to do a time warp. Period and comma will adjust time warp. And so we're going to go ahead and increase time right now until we get closer down. Now the 7 seconds is 7 seconds of full burn, meaning we need to go ahead and start thrusting, increasing our throttle before we reach that. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. So at 3 seconds, we're going to start throttling up. 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, now I was still about 16.9 meters short, but we'll be in a stable orbit nonetheless. I'm going back out here to the world view. I'm going to click and remove this maneuver point. Now you'll notice the blue circle goes all the way around. This is our orbit. We're now in a stable orbit. We will continue to circle the planet. So that's all there was to it. We actually have plenty of fuel left for our return, more than we'll need. And so now see our peropsis is 102,000. That's the lowest point in our orbit. And then our aopsis is 145. That's the highest point in our orbit. So now we're going to go back to ship view, turn on some time warp. And you can see our orbit. We're moving at over 2,000 meters per second in our orbit. You can't make any adjustments while you're time warped, so if you need to make any adjustments, you need to go down. I don't want the computer wasting my monopropellant, so I'm going to disable the RCS. And actually, I'm going to turn off the SAS too, because we're in free fall orbit in space, so we don't really need to do any control. Turn the speed up here. It's a little bit staggery because I'm recording at the moment, but so yeah, we're in a stable orbit. As you can see, we're traveling around the planet. And that's all there is to a stable orbit. Now, we're going to go ahead and work on a return trip. Now, I'm not very good at planning where I want to land my return trip, like back at the space station or something like that. However, I am just pretty decent at making it back to planet Earth safely. So we're going to go ahead and decrease our time warp. And since the aopsis is the highest point in your orbit and the periopsis is the lowest point in your orbit, we're going to plan our descent back at the periopsis because it'll take less thrust to get us down where we need to go. So we're going to go ahead and click here, add a maneuver, and we're going to grab the opposite side. We're going to lower our orbit. Now, the second our orbit goes on these two sides, and since we're going this way, that means wherever this orange line is here, that's where we're going to land in our descent. So, you don't want the descent to be too steep, or else you'll burn up, or you'll break. And so we'll go ahead and stick with that. Will that put us in the ocean, or... It's hard to tell without the sun on the side. That should put us right in the ocean just off the coast, if everything goes according to plan. So that should be just fine. So we're going to go ahead and leave that maneuver. So that means we have 14 minutes and 40 seconds until we get to the periopsis, and we have to do a full burn for 8 seconds. Now we're going to do a time warp because I don't feel like waiting for 14 minutes. However, let's go ahead and make our adjustments to our nose. Right now we're going to turn the RCS on, turn the SAS on, and see if we can't find the blue indicator. Alright, let go of F, and the computer should try to keep our nose pointed where it needs to be. And we're going to go ahead and speed up time. You want to back off the time warp before you get there, because you definitely don't want to miss your point. So I slowed it down a bit. Alright, let's turn it back to normal speed. 3, 4, 3. Alright, we're going to start burning. And you notice I'm burning against my orbit, which means I'm slowing down my orbit. 2, 1... Alright, that was almost perfect. We got it down to 5.3 meters short. You'll notice I modified our orbit. It looks like we're still going to touch down in the water just off the coast, which is perfectly fine. Go ahead and remove this indicator. Alright, we're going to go ahead and speed up time. Now, when we're returning orbit, once we get inside the atmosphere, gravity's going to do the work. We won't need to thrust at all. Speed up time a little bit more here. Right, if once you get into the a certain altitude or like into the atmosphere, instead of being a time warp, it becomes a physics warp, which means it just makes everything move faster. But since you're inside the atmosphere, and it's a physics warp, it can actually tear your ship to pieces if you use it too much. That was what that warning was. Alright, we're back inside the ionosphere. Okay, now what we want to do, I'm going to go and slow down the time so I can explain this real quick. So we want to keep our bottom, our tip facing away from the surface. So we're going to go ahead and find right here where, yep, we're going to keep our nose tip pointed right there on entry. That'll keep our rear end pointed towards the atmosphere itself. We're in the upper atmosphere. It's just really dark over here because we're going on the dark side of the planet right now. Now the demo doesn't have all the proper effects in physics. In the full version of the game, there's actually re-entry physics, and so you would actually see the... I'm showing you this now because in the full version you'd have to make sure you're facing the right direction. In the full version, there's re-entry physics, and so you can actually burn away and break away parts of your ship if you're not doing entry properly, and whatnot. You'd actually hear it and see the fire burning around the ship and whatnot. In the demo, it's an older version, so it's not quite in there yet. We're going to jettison that part of the body. We're going to drop a parachute out. At 500 meters, the parachute will actually catch wind. Just like so. Our rocket body hit the ocean. Now, there's the coast. It's going to say we're not too far off the coast. Realistically, we're pretty far out here for a boat to reach us, but since the game doesn't seem to care, we're okay. Let's speed up time a little bit here. $20 meters. There you have it. Safe landing back on Earth. And our astronaut is plenty happy. By the way, C takes you inside the ship. And you can actually look around and stuff will move and you can push buttons and whatnot. You can take over the view. Now you can actually... I should have showed you this while we were in space. You can actually get your guy, you hit EVA, and he'll exit the hatch, and you can actually fly around space with him. That's because you can do actual landings, and your guys can actually get out of the ship and fly around and walk around and stuff, and do. You can actually build bases on other planets, like moon landing sites and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, this video is already 37 minutes long, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to end it here. But there you have it. That's how to build a rocket, get into orbit, and return safely.